So I'm recording a couple of I'm going to record this Doomsday League just as like a archival thing for Lurrus. I've been finding Lurrus a lot of fun to play with in Doomsday. I've been finding it makes the deck quite interesting. I fully intend to record another league before this eats the ban in the upcoming ban announcement, but I'm recording this as I might not get a chance to. This is going to be me showing a past league, one that we got to play against mono blue decks and all bar one Lurrus decks, and I just thought it kind of showcases exactly what Lurrus can do and why I was having so much fun playing with it. So in regards to the deck itself, we're on 16 lands, which is a little lower than normal. We're making it up with a pedal. Pedals get quite good with Lurrus in that they can become 2 mana, so they can kind of become like a basically a dark ritual. We're playing 4 baubles as a draw engine, an unearth, both for its interaction with Baleful Strix in certain creature-based matchups and its interaction with Lurrus against counter magic. It also gives you a predict pile with Unearth, letting you predict away Oracle and hold up Force of Will. So you can get a fair bit of utility out of Unearth. I wasn't playing it previously, prior to Lurrus, but it's proved quite good here. It's a very versatile card and does a lot of things. We got a few discard spells, so a couple of Thought Seizers, a Duress, a Cabal Therapy once again for its synergy with Strix. Dark Rituals is acceleration for our Doomsdays. We are a proper Xerox deck, so we are playing the full 12 cantrips. We have 1 Cycler in the deck, which is Edge of Autumn. We can't play Street Wraith. 1 Cycler can be restrictive occasionally, but is typically enough. A couple of copies of Predict and an Ideas Unbound. Ideas Unbound just lets us draw almost our entire library after a Doomsday. So if you make, for instance, a pass the turn pile that includes a fetch land or an edge, you actually have your entire library. Predict has good synergy with our baubles to help us get card advantage, also helps us draw into our piles. The second Predict is kind of a flex spot, so it's kind of a couple of cards that it could be, but I've been enjoying playing with the second Predict. 4 Doomsdays is the eponymous card for the deck. And 4 copies of Force of Will as protection. In the sideboard, we have Crypt to Lurrus Loop it against like reanimated decks should we come across them. Surgical Extraction plays nicely against graveyard decks, and even against other combo decks when paired with our discard. Dead Weight is an absolute beating in creature-based matchups. Veil of Summer as extra interaction, either against discard-based decks or against blue decks. Carpet of Flowers for fair blue matchups. Scylla Primordium as a recurable removal piece for chalices and things like that. 3 Decays as good catch-alls. A Massacre if we have to play against a white weenie deck, including the current one, which can be a little bit of a nightmare. It plays Leon and Arbiters, which turn off not only our fetch lands but also our Doomsdays. And finally, as our 15th sideboard spot, we have our Lurrus. So let's get on to one of the matches here. So, as I said, this is a retrospective. We've already played these matches, so I'm going to be going through the recap. Starting off with this one here. So we've lost the die roll. We'll reveal our Lurrus, and I believe our opponent's going to do the same. Yep, that's correct. So we're in a Lurrus mirror. We have... This hand's pretty much a snap keep. We have 2 lands. We have interaction. If we can draw a bauble, we can predict. So this hand kind of has everything we want. We wouldn't mind... Well, I guess we're playing against a Lurrus deck, so we're not worried about needing a Force of Will turn 1, most likely. Lurrus decks don't typically require you to have the turn 1 Force. So Prismatic Vista into Snow-Covered Island typically indicates to me, it could indicate like one of the Fair Bug decks, but I would normally expect it to be an indicator of Miracles. Now with the current Miracles builds, it is worth mentioning that they often play Counterbalance as a card that can be recurred with the Lurrus. So we want to go ahead and Thoughtseize here, I think, and give ourselves the best chance of just tagging the early Counterbalance. We can fetch an Underground Sea as well. Now we've seen the basics. So we've managed to tag the Counterbalance. We're going to take that. They can recur it with a Lurrus, but there's still quite a few turns away, so they'd need to hit like... So they need to hit a land, which they probably will. They have enough cantrips. And then they won't get to play, and then the Lurrus comes out the turn after that, and then the Counterbalance comes the turn after that, and they might want to hold up the Lurrus until they can find something like a Caracas, so that they can protect it. We haven't really tipped off as to what we're on per se with just Delta Thoughtseize. So we're going to go ahead and take the Counterbalance here, and we're going to pass the turn back. Opponent fires off an Astrolabe. To dig a little bit deeper, and I guess they're going to go ahead and ponder. So we now have very little information about what's in their hand. So we go ahead, draw for turn, draw a land. We preordain, and I went a little bit quick there, but I'm guessing we bottomed both given we drew a land. And we can just go ahead and preordain again. And we actually want both of these cards. Doomsday is obviously what we need to win the game. We can cast it as early as next turn. And Brainstorm lets us win next turn. So I think his Brainstorm is the only card we know about that he has in hand. So we'll go ahead and play a land and ponder. And I think we want the Bauble and the Brainstorm. And we may not want the Strix, but I think we can afford to draw it. So we take the Bauble. The Bauble's going to let us leverage our Predict as well. So I think we should Bauble here. We can actually afford to shuffle away the Brainstorm with the Predict. So we're going to have to fetch. Opponent reveals Counterspell. So he Brainstorms. We're going to cast Predict. Now, he has the option of fetching here, which I think he probably should, to stop us from drawing the extra card. It makes his Brainstorm suboptimal, but I think that's a worthwhile price to pay to stop us from generating card advantage. And of course, we're going to Predict away his Counterspell. We draw Force of Will. So I think next turn, so Thoughtseize is perfect here. Thoughtseize lets us decide how we want to proceed. So it's quite likely opponent... I guess they're not going to tap out here. They still don't know what we're on. They just know we're on Underground Sea Predict. It's probably a good tip-off that we are on Doomsday, but depending on how current they are with the meta. We really want another blue card. We don't find it, but that's okay. We have a lot of things we can do here. So we can lead on a Thoughtseize. What's he tagged? So he's tagged a Brainstorm. And he's got multiple Swords to Plowshares. So this actually makes our Brainstorm pile pretty good. Because what we can actually do here now is we can rip through our entire library using something like a Predict or Gifts Ungiven pile. An opponent needs to find exactly Force plus blue card off his one Brainstorm, with no blue cards in hand, I should add as well. So he's got a fair density of blue cards, but currently, you know, like it's, I guess, around 50% of his deck, which gives us really good odds. So here we are going to make a Brainstorm pile. We have to consider whether or not we want to pass the turn, and I actually don't think we do because I think there's enough things that can go wrong. And we have everything we could possibly want to make a Brainstorm pile. So I would imagine this is going to be using something like... He's tapped out, so we don't actually need to play around the swords anymore either. So something like a simple... Lion's Eye Diamond Edge Oracle pile is sufficient. So what do we got? Petal Unearth, Predict, Edge. I mean, this works as well. Or does it? So what do? We brainstorm into, like, Predict, Oracle, Unearth. Yep, okay. So what we do is we just need to make sure Predict and Oracle are on top of our library, and we can draw everything else. I guess we might need to cycle the edge here. So we are still vulnerable to a Force of Will here. Okay, so we're making a pass the turn pile. I think it was probably correct to just try and go for it. I think he would have forced the Doomsday if he could. So Lurrus being cast doesn't really do anything here. And Mystic Sanctuary getting back Counterspell definitely won't help. So we know that he's got... those cards in hand? No, he's got those in hand. Oh, okay, so he's going to snap that back. And I definitely missed that line, so that was a good reason to go for it last turn. Okay, so for anybody who missed what happened, what we actually did then is we drew Predict for turn. We Predict Name Oracle. We draw Edge Unearth. We cycle the Edge... sorry, Edge and Petal, because I think Unearth was on the bottom of our library. We cycle the Edge, we draw our last card, and then we can unearth the Oracle. So it's just a very simple pile. We'll go to sideboard now. So we'll just take a gander to quickly figure out what we've brought in. So we have brought in 3 Abrupt Decays, a Carpet of Flowers, and 3 Veil of Summer. We've taken out our 2 Strixen. They don't really do a lot in the matchup. A Lotus Petal. We don't particularly need the velocity. Unearth, it loses utility without the Strix, and we're probably not going to make the same pile again. Opponent is much more likely to have Surgical Extraction, which makes Unearth worse. And we've taken out Cabal Therapy. We've replaced it with Veil anyway, and it's not as good without the Strixen. And a couple of Dark Rituals, because we're going to go a little bit slower anyway. We're going to play this very much as if we're a control deck, which we are, and we just have a nice combo finish. We reveal a Lurrus again. We keep our hand. This hand's great. So he's going to bauble us. So he knows what we're going to draw for turn, which is a Thoughtseize. So I kind of feel like going ahead with a Thoughtseize here again is probably the correct play again. And we got paid off, and I think we probably take a Spell Snare here. He's got the Caracas, which could be annoying. The Spell Snare forces him to hold up mana. So maybe we should have taken the Force, as we're going to need to get through that anyway. But I just tend to find it's very easy for him to have blue cards, and Snare can be a real problem for us. We have a lot of 2-drops that they don't always want to force. So like something like a Predict at the right time is actually quite bad for us. So he got lucky, he ripped a Fetch off the top. He might have actually been in, I guess maybe not, like the Bauble's a free draw. Okay, and he's pondering. So we draw another Force of Will, which I guess means we can now just play out a Preordain. And we like both of these cards. I think perhaps it was correct to draw the Ponderer over the Misty, just in case our opponent is insane and decides to Surgical Preordain. It would have been very wrong to do so, and I guess maybe we shouldn't play around people being bad players, but people do some wild things sometimes. So we still know 3 of the 5 cards in opponent's hand. Happy to go ahead and ponder. And this looks like a Red Blast. Opponent gets to enjoy their own ponder. I personally feel a little bit put out by this, but that's okay. So there is an argument here. So I think perhaps I should have just played out the Lurrus without using the Ritual. Although then again, trading for 2 with the Ritual is completely fine by us. So we're kind of also okay to do this, as we're now going to start deploying our Lurrus fairly regularly and just using it as a draw engine, and it's going to tie up their Caracas. Eventually we're going to be in a position to I guess we should have baubled ourselves there to see what we were going to draw, because we really want to predict. So we'll draw our 2 cards. The Carpet of Flowers will do just fine. So Carpet of Flowers means we can now deploy our Lurrus really regularly. Without needing to be concerned about tying up our mana, and then they need to tie up their Caracas to keep trying to fight this. So the first thing we want to do is drop our Carpet of Flowers. They're probably not going to force it because it's terribly trivial for us to Lurrus it back regularly, unless they want to fight really hard and you burn up all their forces, which probably hurts them in the long game. They kind of need these. So we will pass to our opponent's next, or we'll pass to our next main phase. We get to now trigger Carpet, and it's nice that Mystic Sanctuary here counts as an island, because it's going to let us get the 3 black mana to cast our Lurrus. And now we have a Dark Ritual every turn. One that only gets better as the game goes on. The other thing here is they might be inclined to Caracas our Lurrus again. If they do so, we're decaying theirs in response. This becomes important as we're now the one with the Lurrus that we can keep redeploying. They have to find a way to remove it, otherwise we're going to accumulate card advantage. And we're doing this at very little cost to us. So they're going to have a think and let us do it. They have a predict. So now they're using their Caracas. And we're removing their Lurrus. And this is an extremely good trade for us. Especially now we have the Doomsday. So we now have no particular incentive to deploy the Doomsday just yet. We kind of want to just continue to pull ahead. Using Lurrus to generate card advantage, I will probably preordain this turn, although maybe not. So this is interesting. So I think we can just make our 3 black. Play our bauble. So I guess we want both of those cards. And opponent draws Counterbalance here. So Counterbalance is a card we do need to fight over. Interestingly, however, we don't need to fight over... So what do they have in hand? They don't have a Lurrus, so we know about these 5 cards. So they're going to lead on a Counterbalance, and we want to brainstorm here as we actually want to find a Veil. And we don't. So we can get rid of the Dark Ritual. Carpet of Flowers is doing Dark Ritual duty. And the Preordain's the other card to get rid of. Although, interestingly, we could just triple Force of Will and then try to pull ahead that way. I wonder if that's the correct approach here. I think it might have been. I am going digging. There we go. So double Veil. So we still don't want this Dark Ritual, but we continue to want this Veil. And so we'll Force Pitch Force. And what we're hoping for here is to get them to respond. So we know they have Force, Pitch, so we know they have Force of Will, Snap Reb. So they're going to Snap Reb at some point. And unfortunately, having the Reb in hand is a little bit worse for us here. Because it means that they now have 4 cards in hand. Well, it means that we know they have 4 cards in hand. So we're kind of hoping that like one was a play or a surgical extraction. But basically what this exchange is going to do is it's going to leave zero cards in their hand and Doomsday in ours. And we're just going to make a stack of black mana and run the Ponder into the counterbalance here. So the reason to run the Ponder into the counterbalance is this lets us find out what's on top and lets us hold the Veil for our combo turn. We'll shuffle our library. We don't want to deploy the LED just yet. We do want to play our Doomsday. And so Veil lets us So I think the best way for us to approach this matchup. So I build this pile wrong. Having a look at it now, I built this pile wrong. So I built it to win in a single turn. Now, opponent doesn't actually have anything going on. So what we should be doing here is doing something like drawing Abrupt Decay next turn into possibly something like Ideas Unbound the turn after, or maybe it's not even Ideas Unbound, maybe it's just a bunch of cantrips. So remove the counterbalance, cast a Veil, get enough cards on the board, and then just have enough cantrips, and then draw the Oracle, and then what we can do, we can put ourselves in a position with Lurrus and Lion's Eye Diamond, where hopefully we can just recast the Oracle if it happens to get countered. But that's okay, so this pile works as well. So I think that would have been the better pile. But what we're going to do, we're actually just trying to vary our casting costs. So we want Ideas Unbound over Predict, I think. Yep, so we take Ideas Unbound. We're going to draw that next turn. We want Edge, so we have 0 cards left in library. We need our Oracle as our win con. And then I think the rest doesn't matter a great deal. So now, our opponent has a shuffle on the counterbalance. And they do have some ways out of this. It's just not terribly easy. So they can Mystic Sanctuary back a Ponder. I'm wondering if they had anything better than Mystic Sanctuary back, but I don't think they did. So they can Mystic Sanctuary back a cantrip, draw it for turn, and try to set up their counterbalance to beat whatever it is that they think we're going to do. So they pondered, drew Astrolabe, so they saw the top 3 cards, so they know the top 1 card of their library at the moment, I guess. And interestingly, if they Surgical there, we can respond with a Veil of Summer, and if it resolves, we draw a card and we draw the Ideas Unbound anyway, meaning that their Surgical doesn't do anything. Could have done that on their turn as well. That's fine. So Carpet of Flowers is just going to make a bunch of blue mana here. Because for the rest of the turn, we only need blue. Whoops, that was wrong. So I guess that's to let us replay the Lurrus. I don't think that's correct. So there's a 1-drop on top of their library. So now we can Ideas Unbound. So now we can play out Oracle. Holding up Edge in case they have a Swords to Plowshares. So they're drawing blind at the moment. They do have some 2-drops in the library, so it's a possibility this doesn't work. They draw a 0, or they flip a 0. Plow the Dude, which I guess was the top card on their library. And we now get to Edge. And that'll take the match. So let's get on to the next one. So that was quite grindy and a bit of a slog. You can see I'm down to 10 minutes on the clock. It's a bit abnormal for me. We're going to move on to the next one though. So once again, it's another blue matchup. This is all blue matchups, this league, from memory. And we played against a bunch of Delver as well. So we'll get on with this one. We'll reveal our Pokemon again. We're on the draw. And look, this hand's a keep, but not an amazing one. And our opponent gets to double bauble. We get to bauble back. What do we reveal? Underground Sea. So the reason to go off in Doomsday here is that opponent doesn't actually have a lot going on. We can also Lurrus here. So I'm not sure which is better to do, like Lurrus or Doomsday. I guess the fact that he's drawing 2 new cards actually makes, given this would have to be a past the turn pile, makes the Lurrus actually a better long-term plan, because we now get to draw 2 cards a turn to his... Given he's on a Force of Will Deco as well, we could assume he's on something like the Mirror, or the Mirror with the Force of Will, I guess, but it's much more likely to be a Delver deck, whether or not that be Bug or Grixis. Alright, so we're going to draw a card for turn. We get another Brainstorm. And this is going to buy us an endless amount of time. An opponent now needs to basically remove our Lurrus and have a Wasteland here, or is probably in a lot of trouble. Lurrus duds... So what's he drawing? So Lurrus basically means that Nimble Mongoose is a non-card, and so opponents also want to on the bug Delver decks, which for what it's worth I've found fairly trivial in terms of how difficult it is to beat them. I think we want to go ahead, probably attack before Thought Seizing. Okay, so he's got nothing. Thought Seize is actually the most pointless card we have. Yeah, we should have moved to combat. We're not going to win with creature beats, but the fact that we're not going to win with creature beats doesn't mean we shouldn't chip in where we can and like buy ourselves some more life. What we are kind of... Okay, so he's got a Ponder on top. So what I kind of don't mind doing here, Ponder on top for Underground Sea in hand, is moving to combat ourselves and then using Unearth to trade for 2 of his creatures if he takes the bait. So he's realised that's not a good idea. We probably have something else going on. So we want to put back something like Tropical Island. Yeah, so we can actually afford to put back 2 lands here without much stress. And just keep cantripping. And I think we want to just... So I'm almost inclined to just keep getting jewels at this point. Take the discard spell. Bauble again. We shouldn't have baubled there, like we already know what he's drawing. There's no mystery. And he has discarded, or he possibly has discard as well, so you know it might have been a good stored draw. He obviously thinks the Abrupt Decay is going to be helpful. And we're going to really upset him here by unearthing our dude, drawing a card, and baubling again. So opponent really isn't drawing anything exciting. So he's getting really badly flooded here. And I think if we draw a Doomsday... No, if we draw a Dark Ritual, we win the game. So I'm not sure it was necessary for us to make that trade there. But I guess we know opponent's got nothing and we can brainstorm here for a Dark Ritual. So do we know opponent has Flooded Strand on his deck? If so, we just go ahead and predict. Or I guess we can just kill him. Never mind, I forgot we drew a land. So this is actually, once again, it's a pretty straightforward pile. We're going to do something like Brainstorm, put back into Edge, LED. It doesn't matter. And we can put back Ideas Unbound. Maybe we want like a Preordain. So no, actually we're going to draw our entire library. So maybe a Lotus Petal. And so this is just a draw our library pile. So put 2 Lotus Petals on bottom. We just make sure the LED edge are in the top 3 so we can brainstorm into them. Now what we need to do is put Thassa's Oracle Ideas Unbound on top. And we'll cycle into our Ideas Unbound and win the game. Opponent's scoop, they've seen the writing on the wall. So we'll go back to game. We'll go on to game 2. Now, sideboarding for this matchup. In most Delver matchups, might look a little bit weird. Now, Delver decks attrition you. Fundamentally, that's the way they operate, right? They run you out of cards. So Force of Will was relevant in that game. It's not always. And even then, we only forced a Lurrus. So in this matchup, we are boarding out 4 copies of Force of Will. 1 Lotus Petal, believe it or not. We're not going to spend our entire lives playing around days. And we still have 2 petals. And we're boarding out a Bauble as we don't really want to take that long. Unearth is really good in this matchup. Recurring Strixen, recurring Lurrus runs them out of cards and lets us play the attrition deck. So we're going to keep it in. We're also boarding in Carpet of Flowers to turn off all their soft permission. We're boarding in 2 copies of Deadweight. Recurring that with Lurrus just is game over. And so 2 copies of Deadweight, a Carpet of Flowers. What else do I bring in? What else is in the sideboard? Hang on. I can't remember. So I will check back. We'll hopefully find out. Anyway, at a minimum, that's what we've got. Alright, so let's get on with this. This is a keep. It's the same as a Mulder 6, but we have plenty of lands. So we're going to beat Wasteland pretty easily. Including the ability to fetch basics. We didn't really want to draw a Dark Ritual there, but that's fine. And we're not going to play into Stifle here, so we'll go ahead and we'll fetch an island. So we don't know for sure they have Stifle, but there's just no need to play into it at the moment. It's got a Nimble Mongoose out. We'll play out another land. And we can play into the days here. So playing into the days with a Preordain when we have a Brainstorm and a Ponder in hand is actually a-okay. We're going to draw the Brainstorm and we're just going to pass. We're not terribly excited about trying to do anything at the moment. We are letting them stifle our mana development a touch. It's not the end of the world. All I have on board at the moment is a Goose. Oddly enough, like, Goose is very anemic in this matchup, but is also necessary just due to the existence of dead weight. Ah, that's right, we brought in Veils. Okay, so we have 3 Veil of Summer as well to take the place of our Force of Wills. So if we get a Veil, so let's just go ahead and Brainstorm. We're going to put back a Lion's Eye Diamond and a Dark Ritual, I think. In that, and we should put it back in that order. Even if we don't. We'll go ahead and we'll play out a Carpet of Flowers here. So if they have Spell Pierce, they need to pierce this. If they have Force... Yep, there we go. So that we've burnt a Force on it. And a Force of Negation, no less, which is the only way it's actually getting permanently removed. We are very okay with this trade. What did he reveal? So that's a Flooded Strand on top of his library. I think we should go ahead and Ponder here. There's no reason not to, and it can set up another land draw. Yep, okay, cool. Or it can set up a really sick turn next turn. So we have a Bauble active, which means... So he almost certainly doesn't have a Wasteland in hand or he would have played it. He'll probably shuffle with his Flooded Strand, so we're drawing blind. So we need to dodge a Wasteland for a turn, but if we do, we're going to have all 3 of these in hand. We can lead on a Thoughtseize, find out what's up. So the Unearth is going to let us do some pretty gross things. We might need to lead on a Dark Ritual, actually. We're happy to lead on the Dark Ritual here, I think. Because if we can get our Lurrus into play with a Baleful Strix, we're going to be so far ahead. Okay. Well, that's not as much fun. We couldn't dodge the Wasteland for a turn. And that's a less good draw. That's about the last card we actually want to see. So we're okay with everything that's on the board now. He might attack into the Strix with the Goose. Okay, so this is a bit better. So we'll play out our Lurrus. We're going to trade off a bunch of cards here. But I mentioned before that Lotus Petal can actually become become effectively a Dark Ritual, i.e. +2 black mana, with very little difficulty. So we're trading a lot of cards. We're completely okay with having our Lurrus surgically extracted, by the way. So Surgical Extraction is a very problematic card in this matchup, in that it's one of the few ways of interacting with us, or normally one of the few ways of interacting with us once we have our pile. I think we just go ahead and Doomsday here as well. So we have protection on the board. We can tuck an Oracle and a Dark Ritual. And we can set up a turn next turn where we will probably try to play our draw 3. And this is why I've been finding the bug Delver matchup fairly straightforward. They're trying to out attrition Delver decks. We're playing on a different axis and we're attacking them from a couple of different angles, and so we're playing a really good attrition game. We actually might need a predict here. So I think we actually need a predict unearth pile, because a second wasteland would blow us out, although the brainstorm changes that. So that's interesting. So I think... Alright, so yeah, I guess we just make a fairly straightforward predict pile. We can do whatever we want. They're very unlikely to have a second surgical extraction, and they don't have reach, so they can't just bolt us. So we got a Lotus Petal on the bottom. So predict here is going to predict away Unearth. Unearth is going to draw something like Edge something. I think maybe an Oracle. And then we're going to draw our last card, which should be a Lotus Petal. Anyway. His opponent scooped a little bit early there, but once we got our predict off, we were probably in really good shape. Alright, so let's move to the next match. An opponent has not revealed a companion. So not revealing a companion typically indicates to me that we would be playing against something like Eldrazi or some unfair deck that can't normally deploy it. Something like Dredge. So Eldrazi, Red Stompy, Dredge are the kind of main scary ones. But a Scalding Tarn into either a volcanic island, a mountain, or a basic island, especially given it's actually a basic, tends to scream show and tell. So we probably need to lead on a Force of Will. Sorry, not a Force of Will, a Thoughtseize. Daze still doesn't tell me if we're playing against Show and Tell or if we're playing against Delver. Fiery Isla indicates Delver. And so we're just playing against blue-red Delver. So I still think it's fundamentally... Sorry, I went through that a bit quick, but I think we preordained into... I suppose we're about to find out. So we drew a land for turn. We preordain into a bauble. I want to see the game log. I don't know why I can't see it. So I guess we play a land out here as well. So I don't think it's a great idea to be playing... So he's drawing a Volk for turn. I guess we'll ponder. I guess we kind of want the Strix here, right? And the Preordain. So I'm not sure I see a good reason to play blue-red over any of the other Delver variants, especially because I think, it tries to win on speed alone. Lurrus can do uncomfortable things in strengthening your matchup against it in that it has lifelink, and you lose the card advantage opportunities that you get from a Lurrus. I guess we Thoughtseize again here. They might bolt. We're okay with this bolt being pointed at the Strix, because it actually means that it's, what's that, 5 points of damage that's not going at our face. So we'll take the Arcanist here. The Arcanist is a problem for us in that it can close out the game really quickly. And then I think next turn, depending on what we draw, we either try to kill them if we draw a Dark Ritual, or we... So what's opponent got? Unknown. So we don't know any cards in their hand. So if we draw a Dark Ritual, we try to kill them. If not, we put a Lurrus on the board. We'll bottom both of those. Put back Doomsday and you. So we can Doomsday next turn with Ideas Unbound and Cabal Therapy active. And we can draw a card this turn. So now he has to cycle a Fiery Islet. And I guess we just bauble. Next turn we can actually... So we're going to have 2 new cards in hand, and he's drawing Force of Negation, so we can Therapy that. So can we can Therapy and Ideas Unbound, right? So if we lead on Cabal Therapy and we name Force of Negation here, we take that, we leave him with a Delver that I think we actually knew about from before. We use Lotus Petal to generate an extra point of mana. This lets us cast Doomsday into Ideas Unbound. He doesn't have a Bolt in hand, so we can actually just... Why did I do that? That was silly. So I think that was the perfect point to go for it. Yeah, because we had everything that we needed there with the Lotus Petal, so I missed a point there. That's okay though. We have Force of Will back up now. An opponent just has Ponder. Why is he not doing anything? Opponent's doing some strange things. Or did they Ponder? Okay, so they did Ponder. So I guess we named Lightning Bolt there. So if we go Doomsday... We make an Ideas Unbound pile. So this means something like Lotus Petal, Lotus Petal, Lotus Petal, Edge Vortum, cantrip. It's just all mana and ways of cycling through our cards. It's not exciting. Oh, okay. So we're actually going to do this a little bit differently. And that we're going to Ideas crack LED. We have no need not to. And now we get to play out our Oracle, and opponent will concede. So we're going to come back with the same board plan as we did for the previous match. So we're bringing in 2 copies of Deadweight, 1 copy of Carpet of Flowers, 1 copy, and then 3 copies of our Veil of Summer, and we're cutting all our forces, and we're cutting a Petal and a Bauble. That plan seems to be pretty decent against any variant of Delver, to be honest. It just kind of does everything you need out of it. So I guess this is like a turn 1 Thoughtseize Bauble into possibly a turn 2 Lurrus Bauble, depending on what they have in hand. Drawing a Polluted Delta. So we can actually... So we take an Arcanist, leaving them with nothing. So they were really contingent on getting that Arcanist going, I think. So one thing we can do here is if we wait a little bit longer, like, once again, we're kind of okay with burning a ritual to get a Lurrus out. It helps us stabilize and it draws us cards. So I guess this is a Delver. Sure. Finale of Promise is fine. And this is just going to protect us against basically like them finding a force, which we're pretty sure they don't, but... And we're taking that dead weight, we're snapping that off. That dead weight is probably going to seal up the game. Unless they can remove our Lurrus really quickly. So they'd probably need like a lightning bolt right here. So Finale of Promise is going to buy back their Ponder. They get to crash in for 6. Which, to be fair, is a reasonable clock. They're drawing another Polluted Delta, so they must know about that. So we have to wonder what they have in hand at this point. And I think we can... just cast 2 copies of Deadweight. If they do something like Force of Negation or Deadweight, we have a Veil of Summer available. As we have for almost the entire match. Chain Lightning our Lurrus. So that's a lot of resources our Lurrus has bought us between like removing 2 creatures. I mean, this doesn't get better for them from them for here. And if we draw an Unearth, it'd just be disgusting. So 2 lands in hand. Next turn he needs to So he's just got one land in hand now, and a Delver on the board. So I think almost anything... So we almost certainly want to make this a brainstorm pile. So the reason to make this a brainstorm pile, or do we make it a predict pile? So I think we make this a brainstorm pile. So the reason we make this a brainstorm pile is because if our opponent casts a surgical, we get to veil in response. And the veil in response just means we get to draw into our pile, so we can't mess it up. Because we can soak a... Okay, so opponent conceded at this point, which is fair. But if we make this a brainstorm pile, then we get to basically just make sure we've got the right portion in our hand when we go off next turn. And something like a brainstorm, even into a predict, would be enough. So we'll concede there. Sorry, opponent's conceded. We'll move on to the next match. So you can see it's playing reasonably well against Delver, including the red-based Delver decks, which are considerably tougher. So reveal a companion. Opponent once again does not. This hand is okay. Edge of Autumn is less than stellar. But, and I guess Mishra's Bauble is a blind draw. So there's one card that we have no idea what it does. We haven't drawn it yet. Opponent draws a Wasteland, so we know we need to fetch basics. And we want to take that Delta. So we can go ahead and I think ponder and fetch here. So Delver, no Lurrus kind of probably means that we're thinking blue-red again, but it is possible they're on rug, in which case there is a distinct possibility of stifle. We kind of like all those cards, but we definitely like Brainstorm the most. So what we should have actually done here, though, is I think we should have held up Predict. So you can hold up Predict. They're going to flip something to their Delver. And then we could have predicted away a Lightning Bolt. Now, it may or may not have resolved, but it can force them to use their mana suboptimally, or possibly even daze us when they're not quite ready to do so. So we've decided to go no fear. And we'll play Cabal Therapy. We want to name Bolt. So what do we know they've got? So we name Bolt as we can worry about the Force later. And we're more interested in getting our Lurrus on board. Alright, and so opponent's going to... So this is a like a good indicator of a delve spell. So opponent's on hurting mandrills, which are a real problem for us now. Opponent's really just trying to zoo us. So we really need to probably like play out Petal into Bauble. We should have held the Dark Ritual there, so we're actually... It'd be much better for us to drop the Petal. Although, I guess we actually need it for next turn, so they've got a Ponder coming up. We should absolutely predict here. And we failed to predict again. So I've just basically punted by forgetting this predict is in my hand. So this is a big issue for us. So we can soak this 7. It doesn't actually put us out of the game. And what do we need to do this turn? So we need to untap and probably predict away Lotus Petal or Underground Sea. And we didn't find our Doomsday, so that's that. We needed to be able to beat Days plus Force, so like one of these is easy. Look, honestly, we can beat both of them, but we need a couple of things to go right. So we will go on to the next game. So opponent certainly knows we're on Doomsday. Or not. Did he see a Dark Ritual? He did. We shouldn't have showed him the Ritual. We're going to keep this again. And I guess we have to once again like lead on a Island Ponder. Which is not terribly exciting, but will help us set up. And we need to shuffle that. So this is not a good start for us. Although that's considerably better. So at the moment we're not interested in playing anything into a Red Blast. This is very clearly telegraphing a Red Blast. It might be a bluff, who knows? But we can't just walk into it. If we can draw another land here. Okay, and now I think we just get like C, or maybe C Bayou. Okay, so I've gone with the Thoughtseize here, which seems reasonable. At the moment, Wasteland, it's not easy for us to beat from this position. We need like a Dark Ritual in hand, but we can do it. So we can, one way or another, we're going to need to expose our jewels. It's a matter of whether or not we want to expose them to play a Strix or a discard spell. And I guess playing the Thoughtseize here lets us set up for a Strix Therapy turn the following turn. So, what do we take? So, do we take... So, he has Bolt plus Pyroblast and Grafdigger's Cage and... So, we don't care about the cage. We're going to ignore the cage. It just means we're never going to get a Lurrus plan on going. So, we've got to take one of these. And I guess we maybe take probably it's a Force of Will or a Brainstorm. Okay, Force of Will makes sense. Grafdigger's Cage is completely fine. And now, so there's a very real reason here to just go like Cabal Therapy. And depending, okay, so this is actually pretty good for us. So I think we can do something like maybe take... If we take the Lightning Bolt or the Sylvan Library, I think we're inclined to take the Bolt. Because that's going to force him to use the Pyroblast on our Baleful Strix. Yep. It doesn't let him get off his Hooting Mandrills regardless. And his Sylvan Library won't get cast. Now, it does mean he's probably got a Brainstorm tucked somewhere, but that's fine. And this is even better for us because that Pyroblast now doesn't do anything. And nor does the rest of his mana. So Brainstorm into Fetchland into Hooting Mandrills does lose us the game. Oh, sure, whatever. So we know he's got those somewhere in his top 5. And I guess we need to end step Brainstorm here realistically. Maybe not. So this is pretty much the nuts. So we're going to put back... It doesn't really matter. We're going to put back one of our Doomsdays. And one of like Cabal Therapy or Bauble. It doesn't actually matter. We're then going to fetch Dark Ritual. Doomsday will go to 2 life. And we're just going to cast Ideas Unbound unprotected because we can't wait another turn. We need to go for it now. And if we get Ideas Unbound off, then we win the game. Ideas Unbound can actually just draw Oracle, Petal, and any 2 cards underneath because opponent is tapped out. We should probably add a Cycler and a Preordain. And the reason to do that... Actually, the Preordain doesn't do it for us. So we add a Cycler just to give us better odds overall of like a Surgical not messing us up. And we win the game. So, game 3. So we can see that like Rug is quite a bit tougher. Their threats just clock a lot quicker. And the fact that they're not dirtling with a Lurrus means we can't dirtle with our Lurrus so much. And then you couple that with their bolts and pyroblasts and so on. This is a snap keep. We have a blind draw. We have a way to get our Lurrus going. We have lands and we have cantrips. Now, turn 1 Delver's kind of our worst nightmare. So are they going to flip it? Yes, they are. Into a Spell Snare, no less. So Spell Snare we can beat. We do have Unearth. So we want to... I think I punt here, and I top both of those cards, so I need to bottom the edge. The edge is very bad. Like, it's just not a card we need in hand. So Wasteland's annoying, but not the end of the world. And we're definitely keen on drawing that Delta. We don't mind the Petal either, to be honest. So I think next turn, we might actually be willing to burn a Ritual. To help us get... We should be willing to burn a Ritual to help us get a Lurrus in play. Although the Collector Roof makes it a lot more difficult for us. I think we should have actually just played the C there. So here, I guess, like, opponent just has a lot of options here. I think the one that works out being best for us is the one that makes him most likely to tap out. So we should probably take the goof. Sorry, we should probably leave him the goof. And maybe take the Spell Snare. Yep. So the reason to do this, the Spell Snare incentivizes him to hold mana up. So does the Lightning Bolt. But he needs to find a red source for it, and we're going to drop our dude into play. So we can now trade with the Collector Roof. We're going to play the Bauble. If we can force a trade with the Oof at any point, then we're looking good. So, opponent's Disciplined plays his Delver of Secrets. I think he was very likely to get us regardless. So what happens is, on upkeep, he can Brainstorm and flip the Delver. So maybe the Spell Snare was wrong, but I think we're just relying on drawing live here far too much. And I think I missed the line here by... So I should have Edge of Autumned and just drawn a card. So the reason to edge and draw a card, and I definitely shouldn't have veiled there, because we might have actually lived. Although actually if we do that we can't. It doesn't matter anyway, because we couldn't Doomsday. I guess we could if we attacked with a Lurrus and he didn't bolt. So one way or another, like, our out there was to edge. It's very likely. I guess we wouldn't have drawn the Veil because we shuffled first, but our out there was to edge. But anyway, so Rug Delver, tough. We really needed the dead weight, and we could have done quite a bit of damage to his board. but we didn't find it in time and didn't see a Doomsday all game. So, moving on, we'll go through the last match quickly. We're almost at the end. Okay, and we're on the die roll, and this is another Lurrus mirror. And yeah, I mean, look, we have a perfectly capable hand. So there is somewhat of an incentive to go Dark Ritual Doomsday with Force backup here. And in this case we should have, but Dark Ritual Doomsday doesn't really beat a lot if our opponent has any kind of real interaction. So we would lose to a we'd lose to a Wasteland, we'd lose to a oh, now we get the damn myth. Okay. Alright, I'll stop being salty about the fact that we haven't been able to see the game log. We're just too exposed to everything, basically. So opponent now knows we're on Doomsday, which is annoying. And we're playing around them being on Delver, which is currently like the most likely option. And I think we want to draw... So we're going to put back like a Dark Ritual and one other card, and we have the option of redrawing it off the bauble. I think we don't mind drawing a Force of Will. And I guess knowing about the Cabal Therapy makes us a little bit incentivized to fetch, but then also if he names Dark Ritual, we kind of want to just draw our Ritual and go off, which we're incentivized to do if he therapies us for Force. So he casts a Ponder, he casts Cabal Therapy, he names Baleful Strix. So you can see I'm really enjoying ritualing out Lurrus. Now, I'm not sure that's always the correct play. But as it stands right now, we need to therapy him and name Bolt, I think. Oh no, this just draws us a bunch of cards. We'll trade with the days. Opponent gets his own bauble off. And gets a Delver down. So we'll replay our Strix. Cabal Therapy. I don't know what we named there. I guess we missed. Which is fine, because opponent now just has like double Arcanist, double Daze, and we get to take the Arcanist and leave him with 2 Dazes. And we're now drawing much, much, much better than him. I guess to some extent, right? So he's going to get to... Well, that's a shame. So opponent now gets to play out his Arcanist. Sorry, not his Arcanist, his Lurrus. And gets to put a Delver on the board. So this is where it's starting to turn around poorly for us. And we kind of have to hope that opponent decides not to double dazes here, because we kind of really need these 2 cards. It's possible we could have waited a turn, but I also have a feeling, like, given the rate this is going, next turn he gets to deploy an Arcanist, bashes us for probably 6. I guess maybe we could have waited one more turn. Anyway. So game 2, we're boarding exactly the same way. So boarding in 2 dead weights, 1 Carpet of Flowers, 3 Veil of Summers, boarding out 4 Force of Wills, 1 Lotus Petal, 1 Mishra's Bauble. It really, for whatever reason, holds, like, just works against all different Delver decks. Reveal our companion. We'll keep this hand. This hand is great. We have lands and spells and the ability to play a Strix through a daze on our 3rd turn after cantripping a bunch. So it looks like we bottomed a couple of cards. But it does mean we're going to get to play a Strix through a daze next turn. I think we want to take a Veil of Summer here. I would have been happy to take a Veil with a Petal. Petal for backup. So this is now letting us have our Veil up with a Baleful Strix. We don't really want to use the Veil just yet. We got a ways to go before we're super interested in it. An opponent's now trying to find a way to remove our Strix by the looks of it. Just because it's, not because it's going to win the game, but just because it's going to choke up the board and buy us so much time. And a Dreadhorde Arcanist might do it. So let's just cast a Brainstorm. And we will take our... So what are we going to do? We're like almost inclined to put back 2 copies of Dark Ritual here. Maybe we put back 1 in an Underground Sea, and then we just fetch a Bayou, play a land. Or we could... So even better, we can... Carpet of Flowers does exactly the same thing as Dark Ritual. That's interesting. So I guess we put back 1 Ritual. So we now get to Carpet of Flowers, Veil of Summer backup. we can now veil Doomsday. So this wants to make lots of blue. So he hasn't counted the veil, so we now... Oh, sorry. Now we get to veil. And this is fine. So we're going to start rebuilding using our Lurrus next turn. So we'll trade off Strixen for Arcanist. And I guess we kind of need to draw something good off the Strix. And I finally get my dead weight here. Now, unfortunately, I hit the Lurrus. I should have actually hit the Arcanist. So the reason to hit the Arcanist is the Arcanist then can't attack. The Lurrus can attack in, but he's got to find a way to deal with my Baleful Strix. Instead, my Strix will just trade off. Therapy should not name either of these cards, I would imagine. He gets to pop a Delver into play. And we will take black in the hope that we can brainstorm into a Doomsday. We do not, but what we do have here, so we can, I don't think we want the Polluted Delta at this point. The Carpet of Flowers generates enough mana. So we can put back Lion's Eye Diamond Delta, predict away the Delta. Deadweight the dude. And Preordain. So bottom both of those. I guess we Thought Seize here. And take the Force. And cast Doomsday. Now we're going to be able to Doomsday with a fair bit of life. So our main question here becomes... So we're going to go to 7, fundamentally 6. So 2 bolts might kill us and not much else. So I guess we need something like Veil of Summer. Ideas Unbound seems good. Oh yeah, I guess the other option is just be able to cycle everything in our library, right? So next turn we can cast Ideas Unbound. Fetch. Yeah, so basically what this pile gives us is we now have 1 card. left in our library, fundamentally. So if he counters Ideas Unbound, we then get to do something like Edge into Oracle. If Oracle gets countered, we can then unearth it. So Unearth should be the second last card in our library, with Underground Sea being the last. I preferred having the Oracle there, but this is also fine. We're going to draw the Ideas Unbound. Make lots of blue mana. Cast Ideas Unbound. Opponent is going to decide what he would like to do. We should just cast the Oracle here. Okay, so he has a lightning bolt. So we should have actually just cast the Oracle. And what happens is if you cast the Oracle and he bolts the Oracle, you can Edge, or if he counters the Oracle, you can unearth it. And that would have just been a better play. But doesn't matter. Last game. Hand is not amazing, but it's okay. An opponent knew about the Preordain, so he... I think he saw the Preordain off the bauble and still decided to name Doomsday. So here we are just going to do the obvious. No, okay, so we're actually holding up our Veil at the moment. So I guess we can bauble ourselves here. Decide what we want to draw. Should have baubled ourselves. There's our Doomsday. So I'm almost inclined to just sit and wait at this point. But I guess jamming a Strix doesn't hurt as well. Okay, and he gets his Lurrus out. Alright, so here I think we want to Dark Ritual, Lurrus. We're kind of happy to have the Cabal Therapy. So we named Force. So we get his Force. He has a K command. So what does he actually have? He has those cards. So if we don't do something about his Lurrus fairly soon, we're going to start to get behind. Now I think what we can do so we Veil here, he dazes. And names Doomsday. I'll draw a bunch of cards. So Ideas Unbound is okay. Duress. Take his K command. So he can Caracas our dude, but while he's Caracasing our dude, he's not attacking, and he's not able to do a great deal of anything else. So he currently has... that in hand or something? And now we're both getting the same engine online. So opponent... so what we're doing here is we know opponent's drawing Polluted Delta for turn. So we don't want to flip the Delver. So we know that Delta won't flip the Delver, but we do want to predict to draw 2 cards. So we're going to let the Delver not flip. We're going to predict away the Delta, so we can get our 2 cards. Give them a blind draw, and get us closer to finding our engine. I don't know why they didn't just tag the Lurrus. So, what we've done this turn is we drew Ponder for turn. We found a Carpet of Flowers. So we actually need to win this turn, because we can't win if we wait any longer. So Carpet of Flowers is going to make a lot of blue mana this turn. This opponent has played their Polluted Delta, so they have an unknown card in hand. Alright, so Carpet of Flowers makes a lot of blue mana here. So the reason we want a lot of blue mana is we might actually need to cast Ideas Unbound. And I'm not actually sure if we should be leading on Ideas Unbound or Brainstorm here, but I guess it is Brainstorm because we want the ideas to draw into the pile. Alright, so we'll make blue. So we get triple blue. So basically we want to have enough draw power. We're going to have 3 black, so we're going to have enough to cast a Doomsday. We want to have 5 blue. So I guess we're going to go down 1 on black to unearth to get 1 card deeper. We'll get a land, which is pretty good actually. We can Brainstorm, and we hit gas. So we're going to get rid of the Lurrus and the Ponder. We need neither of these now. I guess we kept the Lurrus, whatever, it doesn't matter. We now get to flashback our Cabal Therapy with our Baleful Strix naming Surgical Extraction, because I think that's the only card off the top of my head that's able to beat us at this point. And we hit Young Pyromancer. I guess Mindbreak Trap would do it as well, but, you know, if they've got a Mindbreak Trap, they got a Mindbreak Trap. We did not see that coming. And now we can Ritual Doomsday. So interestingly here, so we're going to have 4 blue mana. Yeah, so we could have actually left a card in our library, so we could have had a perfect pile. But doesn't really matter. It's actually academic from here. We get to pick 2 cantrips. Or 1 cantrip, I guess, in this case, because we're going to put in an edge. An edge and Oracle. 2 Lotus Petals, a cantrip. 2 cantrips would have done just as good a job. The cantrip gives us a 0 card pile when we cast the Oracle. We've got to make sure it's not a Brainstorm, because that would kill us. And it doesn't actually matter the order here either. get to cast a Preordain. Preordain into Edge Oracle. And I guess this is just the end of the match. I guess our opponent's scooped at this point. But basically what happens is we Preordain into Edge Oracle. So Oracle on the bottom, Edge on top. Edge draws us Oracle. Play Lotus Petal. Win. That's easy as that. Alright, that's my Archival League. I will hopefully record another.